Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Sims. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at the Trade Desk. And in that role, I also oversee our global inventory partnerships, including our CTV partners.
Great, and I'm Jim Nail. I'm a principal analyst on the B2C marketing team at Forrester Research. And one of my main coverage areas is the convergence of linear and connected TV.
Yeah, I think we're in a really interesting moment right now in the evolution of TV advertising. And part of that is due to just how the last year has impacted the landscape. I think it goes without saying, the last 12 months have created, almost a systemic shock to the media ecosystem. And nowhere is that more true than in the television ecosystem. We've had a fairly substantial shift from a consumer perspective into streaming services. We've had several new streaming services launched in the last year between Peacock and HBO Max and Discovery Plus and Paramount Plus. And I think that is pulling a lot of viewership into connected television. And then as a byproduct of that, as far as the advertising ecosystem is concerned, it's also creating a lot of ad inventory in the CTV space as well. And I think that's an exciting opportunity for marketers, but we're at this very pivotal moment right now in the evolution of the TV space. And now I think all of the components that drive the media ecosystem are starting to organize around what this new future is going to look like.
Yeah, Tim, I totally agree. I mean, this past year has been crazy in every aspect of everybody's lives, but it's certainly managed to completely change a lot of things in the TV industry. For a number of years, I've been using a different analogy. I've been using the analogy of plate tectonics because I was a geology major in college. And if you know anything about plate tectonics, what that says is there's these giant continent-size plates that rest on the mantle, and they rub up against each other, and they move very, very slowly. But there's these enormous forces underneath it, and at some point, the forces become so great that you get these giant movements in the plates, earthquakes. And that's what the pandemic has done. The pandemic has been that giant force that the industry could no longer resist, even though for years we've been seeing this slow movement, certainly by consumers, by the media companies building up their data assets, by the growing inventory available in CTV. But the pandemic just really broke a lot of those old habits and old patterns and opened people's eyes to see the need to do things differently and the willingness then to address these really extraordinary and unusual circumstances with new approaches and new ways of planning and buying and thinking about video advertising beyond simply television.
I love your analogy too, Jim, that we've had this like tectonic shift that's caused this earthquake right now. But I think what's fascinating about that is that the consumer experience is still, kind of roughly the same in the CTV space. And so eventually it's all just TV, I think.
Yeah, well, it is, but it does change some of the consumer dynamics in some interesting ways. I think the fundamental motivation that consumers have for engaging with this kind of content is the same. You got a long, hard day at work, you've had dinner, you put the kids to bed, you want to just relax and lose yourself in these stories. But at least personally, I'm finding very interesting is my standards are going way, way up. I mean, consumers are simply looking for the most compelling content, they can find to, just to fill that need of relaxation, entertainment, kind of getting away from it all.
What's amazing, though, is that we are living in an era of the best content that's ever existed on television. It is just incredible. And what that also then creates, I think, is amazing moments for marketers, amazing moments for brands to put their message within this incredible content that we've got, which I think leads to part of this conversation as well, which is how the media landscape and how the media buyers are adapting to this new landscape where we used to live in a kind of 3-network linear world. We now live in this mass distribution, fragmented CTV world. And so how do marketers and agencies and everyone on the media buying side think about how to engage with this new ecosystem?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a bit of a double-edged sword because on the one hand, this content is so compelling. I was talking with my friend Bill Harvey a couple of weeks ago, and he has some research that shows that advertising in, on-demand kind of content is more effective, which kind of makes sense. People have gone out of their way to choose this particular content to watch, higher attention, and that carries over to the advertising. So that's great. But then, of course, so much of the CTV viewing is ad-free. So, advertisers, this is going to make it a little more challenging in some ways to reach their audience potentially. But I think what you mentioned about, the fragmentation, has really reached a new level. I mean, I started my career back in the early days of cable, and planners and buyers were lamenting the fragmentation of cable, where now instead of 3 or 4 networks, there were 20, 50, 250 networks. And, how do you reach consumers? But that was all on one device. Now you've got thousands on multiple different devices, certainly not at any set time of day. So it does make the whole thought process behind planning and buying different. And again, really breaks those old habits that people are still clinging to, just because they're so well worn, they're so well known, they've been so successful for so many years. But in this, not even fragmented, it's an atomized environment. It really is going to take a much more sophisticated approach to achieve what, again, is kind of the same goal we've always had. How do we get our brand in front of our target consumers in a context or in association with content that's really compelling, so that all it delivers our message very effectively?
Totally. And I think you're right. I think there's still a lot of education that needs to happen in the marketplace around just what's happening in the CTV ecosystem. One of the questions I used to get asked a few years ago most often was, what exactly is the inventory in CTV? Because I think a lot of people go to that place that you just mentioned, which is that, well, I watch Netflix and I'm pretty sure there's no ads on Netflix. So what is it? And then what is the inventory? And so then if you fast forward to today, you've got every major media company who has, at least as part of their strategy, has an AVOD strategy. I think what's been amazing or kind of interesting to observe over the last few years is also these two kind of competing forces, where you've had a lot of consolidation on the content side, but then you have this distribution fragmentation where that content's being distributed to a whole bunch of different places. It's being distributed to mobile devices and to CTV devices, and still, of course, on the linear feed. And so that presents some challenges to the advertiser and to the marketer. But I think programmatic has added some value there in the CTV space to kind of normalize that fragmentation that can seem overwhelming. I do think that that landscape is going to stay, somewhat fragmented for all the reasons we said. There's so much great content out there. I might watch it over here today. I might watch a clip on my mobile device. And so how marketers think about the preparation for that future, which will probably remain similar to the way that it is today, is absolutely got to be top of mind for everybody right now.